Nintendo has made hundreds, if not thousands of games, and while they pride themselves on the Nintendo seal of quality, this doesn't mean all their games are perfect. Some games are really not perfect. I believe there's only a handful of Nintendo games I would truly classify as 10 out of 10 experiences. I'm going to try to be as objective as possible, but I also do have biases, so you may disagree, and that's okay. Let me know what games you think are perfect in the comments. If you want to get right into the first game, go to this timestamp on screen, as I'm going to explain my process for what games I consider to be 10 out of 10 on this list. This isn't just about how much I personally enjoyed a game, it's about what the game was trying to be and how it delivered. Games that have almost no flaws and are true masterpieces among critics and fans. Something like Super Paper Mario, which is one of my favorite games, isn't going to be on here because while I really love it, I acknowledge it has some pretty big flaws. Now, even trying to be as objective as possible, people will have different opinions. My views on what makes a game perfect is no more valid than yours, but you clicked on my video, so I hope that even if you disagree with my picks, you'll understand why I chose them and respect it. The first game I want to talk about actually is one of my personal favorites, but I truly believe it to be almost perfect. Super Mario Galaxy. Galaxy is a pretty universally loved game, ranked 4th all-time on Metacritic with a 97 average score. To see why, we need to rewind 11 years to Super Mario 64, one of the most innovative games ever made. It set the 3D Mario formula that Sunshine later tried to replicate with open, sandbox-style exploration. So when fans saw Galaxy, the design looked drastically different. Instead of giant playgrounds, you moved from point A to point B, but that change became its strength. Galaxy trades big, sometimes empty worlds for bursts of creativity. One moment you're skating across an icy pond as Ice Mario, the next you're hopping across Olimar's ship, then riding Gust of Wind in Gusty Garden Galaxy. Each planet or cluster of planets is one clever idea, explored just long enough to wow you before handing you something new. There's no wasted space, pun intended. At the core is gravity. Most games would have treated running around a sphere as a gimmick, but Galaxy designs around it. Battle Rock Galaxy spins the camera as you circle huge platforms. Flip swap planets flip gravity midair so up suddenly becomes down. These twists reinvent platforming in ways that keep even veteran Mario fans on their toes. The controls tie it together. Mario's streamlined moveset feels perfectly tuned, and the spin attack is the glue to this. A quick attack, a stall, a puzzle trigger, even a launch. Combine it with long jumps and wall kicks, and you get very smooth platforming. New players can play straight, while experts can break levels wide open. Galaxy also nails pacing. New mechanics, new galaxies, and new twists constantly appear. The combat system remixes challenges into timed runs or one-hit boss fights. Endgame purple coin stars test precision but reward mastery, and it always has something fresh without shutting the door on beginners. Then there's the world itself, or rather the universe I should say. The Comet Observatory grows livelier as you restore power, its theme layering instruments as you progress. Rosalina's storybook adds quiet depth, delivering one of Mario's few emotional arcs with the Luma's sacrifice at the end, and learning about Rosalina's backstory. And of course, the music. Galaxy was the first fully orchestrated Mario game, and it definitely shows, because this, or Galaxy 2, probably has the best video game soundtrack ever. But some themes like the Observatory, the final battle, beach themes, of course Gusty Garden Galaxy, which is probably the best video game song of all time, they're just all timeless songs that elevate everything you do. Even small touches show polish. Collecting star bits with a Wii pointer keeps you engaged during downtime. Bosses echo level design principles with arenas that flip gravity or chain planets together, and the visuals, despite Wii hardware, still look pretty good today. Sure, there's some nitpicks. Spring Mario is clunky, even though it was kind of fun to control. A few purple coin stars drag, but against everything Galaxy does right, but these are such minor flaws in a game that otherwise really has no flaws that I can think of. That's why Galaxy isn't just a great Mario game, it's pretty much perfect. Now Galaxy 2 I think is near perfect, but I personally preferred Galaxy's levels and I really liked Galaxy's emotional stakes. But I could definitely understand if someone wants to consider Galaxy 2 to be perfect as well. Wii Sports. Shifting gears to a much different game, but on the same system, we have Wii Sports. Now on paper, this game shouldn't be anywhere near a list of Nintendo's greatest, most flawless works. It's not deep, it's not complex, literally a collection of 5 bite-sized sports in bowling, boxing, tennis, golf, and baseball. There's no story, no campaign, no online leagues, no skill trees or unlockable rosters. Honestly, it doesn't even have a super high Metacritic score compared to something like Mario Galaxy, so why am I calling this game perfect? Because for what it set out to be, it nailed it more than almost any other game in history. Wii Sports isn't about depth, it's about accessibility. It's about creating an experience that anyone, anywhere can pick up and instantly understand. And that's exactly what it did. Think back, how many of you went to a friend's house or a family gathering and someone said, let's play Wii Sports? And then suddenly your entire living room turned into a mini bowling alley, or a golf course, or a boxing ring, or whatever it may be. Friends, cousins, parents, siblings, grandparents, anyone could play this. And here's the part that makes it so remarkable. It's just completely timeless. Nearly 20 years later, people are still pulling out their Wiis to play this. Not Switch Sports, definitely not Wii Sports U, Maybe Wii Sports Resort, because that's just more of this basically, and honestly if you want to consider that over Wii Sports you definitely can, but for now I do just want to talk about the original. Think about it, no one in the big 2025 says let's play 1-2 Switch. Wii Sports lasted and is still going strong because it transcended being a launch pack and became a phenomenon. The design was genius in its simplicity. The Wii Remote wasn't about pressing buttons, it was about mimicking real life. You swung the controller like a tennis racket and then the ball flew. You made a throwing motion in bowling and the pins crashed down. You didn't need to learn button combos, you didn't need to understand gaming tropes. You were the controller basically. That's why grandparents could pick it up and play competently within minutes. It erased the barrier between gamers and non-gamers. And let's break down a couple moments that made it shine. Bowling might be the most universally loved minigame, where you could actually put spin on the ball by twisting your wrist. You didn't need a perfect throw to knock down pins, you just needed the right motion. Boxing on the other hand was pure chaos. How many games could have you accidentally launch a controller at your TV? And who can forget tennis? Doubles matches with friends screaming as they lunge their remotes through the air trying to time the perfect volley, or golf, which requires you to slow down, steady your swing, and actually use finesse. And then baseball, which is actually my favorite sport, and it gets way too competitive, and that's why it belongs on this list. It's perfect not because it has endless or deep content, or cutting edge graphics, or complex systems, but because it accomplishes its goal flawlessly. It created memories and has no real legitimate flaws for what it's trying to be. Before I get to the third game, I just want to ask that if you're enjoying this video to please like and subscribe, as it really helps me out. Number 3, Pokémon HeartGold and SoulSilver. Shifting to a different kind of Nintendo masterpiece, HeartGold and SoulSilver, if you were around when they released in 2009, you probably remember the hype. These weren't just new Pokemon games, they were remakes of the already beloved Gold and Silver, which many fans considered peak Pokemon, and somehow Nintendo and Game Freak managed to take those classics and make them even better, so much so that a lot of people even today will argue these are the greatest Pokemon games of all time. So what makes these perfect? First off, the foundation was already strong. Gold and Silver had set the bar incredibly high back in '99. They expanded the Pokemon world beyond Kanto, introduced 100 new Pokemon that felt instantly iconic, and most importantly, it blew people's minds with a post-game twist. But after defeating the Johto League, you can go back and play through all of Kanto again. This was like getting 2 games for the price of 1, so when HeartGold and SoulSilver were announced, the promise wasn't just nostalgia, it was about preserving that magic while bringing it into a modern era. The most obvious improvement is the visuals and presentation. Everything got a vibrant DS makeover with more expressive sprites, richer colors, and environments that actually felt alive. Johto, which already had a sense of cozy charm, became even more magical. The soundtracks were remastered too, keeping that same heartwarming feel while giving them more depth. And let's not forget the games included the original 8-bit soundtrack as an unlockable bonus for those who wanted to experience it like it was 99 all over again. That's Nintendo polish at its finest. But the feature everyone remembers, your Pokemon follows you. This was the very first time Game Freak implemented the idea outside of Pikachu and Yellow. No matter what Pokemon you had in your party, it would walk behind you on the overworld. If you had a giant Lugia, it would tower over you. If you had a small Pokemon, it could wobble along at your feet. It seems small, but it instantly made your bond with your Pokemon feel more personal. Fans loved it so much that for years after, every generation begged for it to come back. Then there's the Pokewalker, a literal pedometer that came bundled with the game, letting you transfer a Pokemon and walk with it in real life to earn experience, items, and even catch wild Pokemon. It turned exercising or just going into a school into an extension of your Pokemon adventure well before Pokemon Go did it. Also, something funny is that the Wii Fit meter just literally used the same exact model as this, but just repainted it, so I just thought that was something funny to point out. But anyway, beyond the gimmicks, HeartGold and SoulSilver just respected the player's time. They were massive. You weren't just getting Johto, you were getting the entire Kanto region as a post-game. That means 16 gyms, 2 Pokemon Leagues, Red is the ultimate final boss, and it was basically the most complete Pokemon package ever. And unlike some later Pokemon games, the pacing here just felt right. You were constantly meeting interesting trainers, catching great Pokemon, and unlocking cool side activities like the Pokathlon. What really pushes these remakes into 10 out of 10 territory is how they honor the past while improving it. They didn't just slap a new coat of paint on Gold and Silver, they rebuilt them with love. They made the world feel more alive, and deepened the mechanics with Gen 4's physical special split, and added quality of life features that made exploration and battling smoother. It's nostalgia without the rough edges. Now, over a decade and a half later, fans still put HeartGold and SoulSilver at the top of Pokemon tier list, and if you ask most lifelong Pokemon fans to pick one game that embodies everything they love about the series, there's a good chance they'll say this one. Or these two, I should say. Metroid Prime, another game that deserves a spot on this list, which a lot of people didn't play, unlike the first 3 games, which are some of the best-selling Nintendo games ever. Released on the GameCube in 2002, this was the series' first step into 3D, and fans were nervous. Metroid had always been about the atmosphere and exploration, so how could that possibly work as a first-person game? Because remember, these were just side-scroller Metroidvania games, so what could this game possibly be like? Is it going to try to be like Halo or Quake, or is it going to stay true to Metroid? And what Retro Studios did quickly became beloved by fans. It kept everything fans loved about Super Metroid, like the exploration, upgrades, backtracking, and isolation, into a first-person perspective that actually enhanced the immersion. Seeing the world through Samus's visor was genius. Brains ripped across your helmet, explosions lit up your reflection, and scanning lore entries turned Talon 4 into a planet that felt alive and mysterious. The world design was near flawless. Areas like the icy Phendrana drifts, the molten Magmore caverns, and the eerie Phazon mines were distinct and interconnected, rewarding you with new secrets every time you returned with another upgrade. Even the Morph Ball, which seemed impossible to adapt to 3D, worked perfectly, opening some of the game's most creative puzzles. And the atmosphere was just amazing in this game. The soundtrack alone made Talon 4 feel haunting and alien, with each zone having its own mood. Boss fights like Thordis and Meta Ridley weren't just challenges, but they felt like cinematic payoffs to hours of exploration. Now, some people don't consider Metroid Prime to be flawless because the backtracking can get heavy and the GameCube controls do feel a little bit dated today, but those are just minor nitpicks depending on who you ask. This game pretty much did everything perfectly. It brought Samus into 3D without losing the soul of the series, and in doing so, it became one of the most immersive and perfect Nintendo games ever made. The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Alright, so here's a game that a lot of people actually don't consider to even be a good Zelda game. I've seen a lot of people just hate on this game, but I think if you look at it objectively, that its flaws are very minimal, at least in my perspective. Following up on Breath of the Wild was no easy task. How do you top a game already considered one of the best ever made? But instead of throwing everything out, Nintendo built on Breath of the Wild's foundation and added entirely new layers of freedom. The biggest change was verticality. You weren't just exploring Hyrule anymore, you had floating sky islands above and the massive pitch black depths below, creating a world that felt 3 times larger without ever feeling bloated. Exploration suddenly wasn't just side to side, it was up and down, surface to underground, with seamless transitions that constantly surprised you. Then came the abilities. Ultra Hand, Fuse, Ascend, and Recall gave players unprecedented creativity. You could build flying machines, craft new weapons out of scraps, phase through ceilings, or rewind objects through time. Every puzzle, every battle, every challenge had multiple solutions, and the game fully embraced letting players get weird and inventive. The story might be a weakness to some, but since the game isn't linear, it's hard to tell an overarching story, but I actually think Nintendo did a pretty good job with this. I thought Breath of the Wild story was definitely on the weaker side, and I definitely was more invested in Tears of the Kingdom, with the Zonai's mysteries, Zelda's role, and Ganondorf's return. It gave weight to your journey in a way Breath of the Wild never quite did. And with themed temples back and a truly cinematic final showdown, it felt like classic Zelda was back in a way. And now to point out some of the flaws that people talk about with this game. It doesn't run perfectly on Switch, although that's more of just a technical issue and not an actual design flaw. The open world can feel a little empty at times, although I didn't think that was a very big issue. And this game isn't as innovative as Breath of the Wild, but if you're just looking at it in a vacuum, I think Tears of the Kingdom is a much better game. I think it did everything better. I like the abilities better, the dungeons, the story, the world. The only thing I will say I liked better in Breath of the Wild was just the experience for the first time just going into this version of Hyrule. Obviously, since Tears of the Kingdom is a direct sequel and uses a lot of the same assets, it's not going to be as new, but it just took Breath of the Wild, which was already an all-time great game, and somehow made it even better. The Ultra Hand alone, I think, is one of the best abilities in a video game. It literally lets you do anything you want in this game. Like, you can build anything you want, you can move anything around, and it just gives you so much to do. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. When we talk about Nintendo's perfect games, and perfect games in general, there's one you can't leave off the list, and it's obviously Ocarina of Time. The only game with a 99 on Metacritic, released in 1998 on the Nintendo 64, Ocarina didn't just raise the bar for Zelda, it set a new standard for 3D adventure gaming itself. Remember, these were the early days of 3D. Many games from that era aged poorly, but Ocarina created a template that's still used today. What most players remember first is the sense of adventure. It begins small, just a boy in the Kokiri forest with a wooden sword and a fairy companion. Then you step into Hyrule Fields for the first time, a wide open area with a castle in the distance, towns to explore, and secrets everywhere. That moment defined what open world would feel like before the term even existed. Ocarina's gameplay innovations were groundbreaking. Z-targeting solved clunky 3D combat by letting you lock on, dodge, and fight cinematically. Almost every 3D action adventure since, like Dark Souls, Monster Hunter, God of War, owes it something, but combat was only part of it. The dungeons are legendary, the Forest Temple's twisted corridors, the Fire Temple's lava-soaked atmosphere, the Shadow Temple's nightmare tone, and of course the infamous Water Temple. And yeah, that is the flaw of this game. When I say these games are perfect, there's sometimes some flaws, and the Water Temple is the worst part of the game. But the rest of the game is just so good, I can ignore it. Also, the 3DS version does drastically improve this. Anyway, love it or hate it, this game just showed how ambitious 3D puzzles could be. Each dungeon introduced tools like the hookshot, bow, lens of truth that reshaped how you approach the whole world. Then came the time travel twist. Halfway through, Link pulls the Master Sword and jumps 7 years ahead. This cheerful world is now ruined, Castletown overrun, enemies everywhere, and you're the hero of time. It literally doubled the game's scope, giving you 2 versions of Hyrule linked by puzzles and quests. The ocarina itself was more than just a gimmick. Song changed weather, teleported you, unlocked secrets, even altered time. You had to play them like notes, which made them unforgettable. Song of Storms, Zelda's Lullaby, Epona's Song, these weren't just background tracks, but they were core mechanics. And the soundtrack overall, it's of course one of the most iconic in gaming history. From Lon Lon Ranch's Serenity to Hyrule Field's heroic theme to the Shadow Temple's eerie tones, Koji Kondo created music that defined 3D adventure. Even the way it shifted dynamically as you explored was ahead of its time. What makes Ocarina truly perfect is that it still holds up. Revolutionary games often fade once novelty wears off, but Ocarina's story, pacing, and mechanics remain engaging. The characters like Saria, Sheik, Nabooru, Ganondorf are memorable. The final duel with Ganondorf, with the castle collapsing, and then the monstrous Ganon fight, it's still one of gaming's best moments. And yeah, there's nitpicks. Block pushing is slow, aiming feels dated, and again the water temple is the worst part of this game. But compared to what it accomplished, those flaws are just so minor, and Ocarina was Nintendo at its peak. Now you might be asking why I have 2 Zelda games on this list, and it's because I think they're both perfect in different ways. They're trying to do different things, if that makes sense. And those are the 6 games that I originally chose for this video, but there are a few more I at least want to talk about. I don't know if these are necessarily perfect games, but I think they're at least in the conversation. Starting off, I want to talk about Super Metroid. This is the gold standard of atmospheric exploration, and it opens with minimal direction, teaching through design rather than tutorials, a ledge that demands a wall jump, a cracked wall that begs for a bomb, enemies placed to demonstrate timing. Progression is built around your expanding toolkit like the Morph Ball, Super Missiles, Grapple Beam, Space Jump, all of which recontextualize the map. Earlier dead ends become shortcuts, suspicious ceilings become hidden routes, the world folds back on itself with precision, making exploration feel rewarding rather than tedious. Movement is tight, weapons feel impactful, and secrets encourage both experimentation and mastery. Sequence breaks like mockballing add depth without excluding newcomers, and the finale is one of the most dramatic in a Nintendo game. This laid the groundwork for the 2D Metroidvania genre. I know right now it's a very popular genre, especially with Hollow Knight Silksong just releasing, and that game probably wouldn't exist without Super Metroid. EarthBound, another very influential game. This takes the familiar RPG framework and layers on unique mechanics that set it apart. The rolling HP meter introduces real-time tension into turn-based combat, rewarding quick input. The auto-win system cuts down on repetitive encounters, and status effects like homesickness introduce strategic variety beyond standard RPG elements. The structure is clear, there's 8 sanctuaries that act as anchors for progression, giving the player consistent long-term goals. Its writing and setting, suburbs, diners, bus stops, support gameplay by making the world distinct and memorable, while systems like inventory management and combat difficulty ensure players plan more carefully. For some, you might say there's clunky menus and occasional grinding that holds it back, but mechanically, this stands out for the way it blends humor, structure, and unique systems into an RPG that feels fundamentally different without abandoning the genre's foundations. And like I said, this is very influential because one of the most popular games of the last decade, Undertale, took a lot of inspiration from this. What EarthBound set out to do, it doesn't really have many flaws at all. Super Mario Odyssey. This game is built on movement and freedom. Mario's expanded toolkit combined with Cappy allows for unprecedented platforming. Cap throws, dives, bounces, rolls, roll cancel vectoring. It just all contributes to probably the best movement we've ever seen in a 3D platformer. The system is flexible for beginners and also really fun for advanced players to do these crazy challenges of. I remember in 2017 I'd watch YouTubers just do these insane challenges in Mario Odyssey. Each kingdom is a dense sandbox packed with micro challenges that reward exploration. Rather than pushing players along a linear route, the game trusts curiosity as the main driver. This freedom is reinforced by Odyssey's Power Moon system, which ranges from simple pickups to elaborate platforming gauntlets. Odyssey is just remarkable because the kingdoms are just so densely packed and open. And there's just so much to do in this game. Whether you just want to go for the moons, whether you want to try to collect every costume, whether you want to just do the challenges, there's pretty much something here for everyone. And I know a lot of people actually do like Donkey Kong Bonanza better, which is basically this game's sequel. And while I do love Bonanza, I think Odyssey's better. I think Bonanza drags on a little bit, where Odyssey, I think the length of the game is good. And then I think a lot more moons are more rewarding than the bananas in Bonanza. The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. This is the structural foundation for much of modern Zelda. Items serve multiple purposes, like the hookshot for traversal and combat, fire rod for puzzles, and bosses ensuring tools stay relevant beyond the dungeon they're found in. Of course, this expanded a lot more with NPCs and story. While the first 2 games were very light on that aspect, the light dark world mechanic effectively doubles the map without padding, transforming geography into puzzle design. Obstacles in one world can be bypassed by shifting to the other, creating layered problem solving. Pacing is near perfect. Players are given freedom but always have a lead to follow, preventing frustration. Secrets are densely placed, encouraging experimentation without overwhelming with clutter. Its only shortcomings today are repeated boss patterns and the lack of modern quality of life features, but its structure and dual-world innovation make it a masterclass in design. This pretty much changed the entire adventure genre. The original Zelda started this, but this game just innovated so much, and every single Zelda game since has taken at least a decent amount of inspiration from this. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Retro Studios' Tropical Freeze is platforming as designed precision. Levels layer moving parts, shifting platforms, wind tussles, foreground-background transitions, into sequences that play like rhythmic patterns. Each stage introduces an idea, explores it, then escalates it before moving on. Character variety supports replayability, like Dixie's Hover and Cranky's Pogo change the level flow, alternate approaches, and David Wise's soundtrack directly complements gameplay rhythm, reinforcing timing and mood. The difficulty is sharp, with late game levels demanding precision, but mechanics remain fair. Every death is tied to player error rather than unclear rules or anything like that. And then there's also Funky Mode in the Switch version that has a more accessible alternative without diluting the core design. For what the developers set out to do, they implemented it pretty much perfectly. Star Fox 64. The campaign in this game is fairly short, but branching routes transform it into a network of alternate missions and outcomes. This design encourages multiple runs with medal challenges and secret triggers providing long-term goals. The controls in this are really fun, like the R-Wings boost, brake, and barrel roll creates a responsive system that gives players full command of aerial space. Charge shot, lock-ons add clarity and precision to targeting in 3D space, making combat both accessible and deep. The game's variety with rail missions, all-range dogfights, and boss encounters keep pacing tight. While its length is a drawback for some, its replay structure, responsive controls, and focus design have cemented it as one of the most polished on-rail shooters ever. It's actually crazy how long ago this game came out before Star Fox Zero and still had better controls, because that is really what held back Star Fox Zero on the Wii U, because the controls were just so clunky. That just shows how important that is in a game. Now, there are a few more games that I think are at least in the conversation of being 10 out of 10 games that I at least want to mention briefly. Kirby Superstar, Super Mario World, you could argue some of the Pikmin games, Xenoblade Chronicles, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, Smash Melee and Ultimate, and I'm sure there's at least a couple more that may become close to flawless. Any of these games I mentioned, I was on the fence if I wanted to include them, but I felt that I should at least mention them. And that's the video. I try to be as objective as I can. It's not for me to decide what a perfect game is to you. I'm just listing out my thoughts here, and you're free to have your own list of perfect or almost perfect Nintendo games. I'm sure someone has snarkily commented on this video talking about how this list is invalid because I included or excluded a game, and I think that's very flawed logic because someone can use that same argument at them. At the end of the day, video games, especially Nintendo games, are just personal experiences that we can try to be objective on, but we'll always have our own opinions that we'd like to be respected. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe so you get notified when I upload. If you want to support me even more, you can become a channel member for as low as a couple bucks a month. I also have a Discord if you want to talk more with the community. Thank you for watching Domainy, and I'll see you next time.